Hi, it's Larry Sperano, and I'm here with Iraq of the Iraq Attack Gamer YouTube channel. And tonight's topic is the passing of Rush Limbaugh, a legend, a living legend before he passed today, and the impact of Limbaugh and also the effect that it had both on myself and on Rack in our younger days. Now, Rack, I recall that when I first listened to Rush Limbaugh many years ago, my reaction was that he was kind of radical. He was kind of off the charts on things, and a lot of the stuff he was saying was inaccurate and unfair to the other side. But I noticed over the years he seemed less and less radical as the other side became more slanted one way. And it appeared to me that what he was actually, the service he was providing was a counter to what had become increasingly a one sided mass media presentation of liberal democratic values, and some of those were so extreme and they were becoming mainstream that somebody like Limbaugh was a necessary counterweight to all that. How did you see it?
Pretty much the same way. Many years ago, I listened to Rush Limbaugh, and I pretty much hated him. I got to just say it that way. I didn't like the guy at all. He seemed, just like you said, radical, even rude at times. Just his stances on politics and issues were just nowhere near where I was. But as you said, over the years, I started to mesh more and more with him. But it wasn't, I don't think, because he changed. It was because I changed. I started to learn things. I started to grow in my knowledge of politics and issues. And I think that was the change. And now, well, obviously, it is a great loss. At the end of it all, I do miss him.
Yeah, and I should make clear that I never entirely agreed with him in the beginning or towards the end, but what I found valuable was that he'd bring up arguments that you didn't hear on the mainstream media. That became increasingly one-sided, and even if his stuff seemed slanted along his own party lines, it still brought in arguments that you'd never hear anywhere else, which was food for thought. And if you listened intelligently and try to weigh things objectively, it really provided a lot of thinking material to examine what was being generally presented by the mass media, all on board. That they were on with the same party line, and Limbaugh was a counter to that, whether he was accurate or not all the time, and whether some of his stuff was way off the charts. It still provided a dialogue that before he came on with his radio show, you didn't have any prominent personality was providing that kind of a counter to the usual liberal democratic arguments, which were very pervasive at the time and still are.
Well, as I grew, even Rush Limbaugh was too tame for me. So he was held a time slot right concurrent with somebody else that I listened to, which is much more right than Rush, even if you can take it that way.
Is that somebody, Alex Jones?
That is exactly Alex Jones. Yes, it is.
Okay,
Alex
see,
Jones
now
is the
there's
worst.
another example of somebody providing a counterweight. Now, I think some of his stuff is really, way out there and not at all accurate. However, a number of things he said have proven to be accurate. And again, he provides food for thought beyond the general acceptance of everything that's presented by the mass media. Now, I grew up as a liberal Democrat. Both I and my parents identified with the Democrats because back in those days, the Democrats really were much on board with the working class, taking care of their needs and what was lacking in their lives. But over the years, it's not the same Democratic Party now, and a lot of that, the switchover started with Clinton when he told the party that they had to become more corporate oriented to get the corporate donations, which the Republicans at the time were racking in. They were getting almost all the corporate donations. So he evened out that corporate sponsorship, and in doing so, they became themselves more aligned with corporations and less aligned with the working class.
Well, they definitely have moved left and continued to move left over the years. They're so far left now, they might even be further than the paint on the wall as the far left paint. So I don't know what to say about that, but yes, they have definitely gotten radical over the years.
Yeah, no, I know you're much on board with conspiracy theories and with what some people would consider extreme opinions on the other side, but at the same time, it creates that mix which we never had before. I mean, Limbaugh really started this whole trend, and in large part, I think it led to a whole generation of conservative commentators and personalities, and probably helped. The establishment eventually of Fox News because it created an audience that was very eager to listen to that side of the news and those kinds of opinions and perspectives.
Right, and it is a great loss for Rush today at 70 years old. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, he used to display with great relish his smoking, constant cigar smoking, and kind of poo-pooed the scares about warnings about cancer, and it caught up with him. But that was part of his personality, and again, it's um, it's so divided now, the nation. And you can make the argument that Limbaugh created an extremism on his side, but as we've said along the way, the Democrats, the main party regulars, are becoming more and more extreme in terms of pushing a certain narrative and not allowing any kind of contrary opinion. And now, as we've seen, and this year especially, they've really gone overboard on the censorship. So something like Limbaugh would be even more essential today with the censorship increasing. How do you see that?
Well, he wouldn't even be able to get in some spots today or remain there. I
Hmm.
mean, the social media, the big social media places, Twitter, Facebook, and so on, they would probably censor him left and right, if not outright ban him,
Yeah.
cancel culture type thing.
Another valuable thing he established, he demystified a lot of the august personalities. He dethroned them. They were no longer these figures that everybody respected and assumed were knowledgeable, assumed were people that had standards. He started attacking them in a colorful way and a blunt way, which hadn't been done before. He took off the gloves. Before it was, dancing around. Nobody really was that blatant or that blunt about attacking the other side. But he let it rip. And, this also, I think, paved the way for somebody like Trump, who was also pitching to an audience that was waiting for somebody like that, eager for a politician like that. Pretty much the same audience that Limbaugh had developed over the years.
Well, I don't know if he was the first or the only in the beginning. I'm sure there might have been a few others. I remember hearing of a very radical type radio host that wasn't even murdered. Do you remember this going years
Yeah,
back?
I think, but he was not anywhere near as prominent. He was mostly the radio, wasn't
Yes, yeah,
he? Yeah.
radio.
So, but Limbaugh is the one who became mainstream while being unmainstream. He dominated talk radio during those daytime hours. As a matter of fact, AM radio was on its way out at the time in terms of ratings, and he really revived it. So he was a game changer for better or for worse. He really had an effect, and that continues to this day.
I'm sure his loss is going to be felt by many people. I mean, he became popular. People have respected him, mostly on the right. On the left, well, that's a whole different story. But I'm sure that many people are going to miss him.
Getting back to how he got people off their pedestals, I could remember during the 2016 election with Trump. Uh, they started off with how many candidates? Over a dozen Republican candidates. And Trump kept gaining strength, and a lot of them kept dropping out. I remember when he was talking to Jeb Bush during the debate. He said, "You're getting further and further to the left. Pretty soon you're going to be right off the stage," because his ratings were going down. And then after that, he dropped out. So, but before that, the Bush family was enshrined by a lot of people. You know, they consider the Bushes such respectable people that nobody could really diss the way Trump did. And that was also part of that Limbaugh effect, that you don't have to necessarily look up to these people just because they've been prominent for a number of years and people assumed that they deserve that kind of adulation. And that was a game changer too. And again, I think the path for that was paved by Limbaugh.
Well, I'll take your word for it. As I said, he's a little bit too tame for me, and he's in the same slot as Alex. So I usually watch Alex,
Yeah.
but I'm sure he has many followers that will miss him.
Well, do you think Alex Jones is inherited some of the Limbaugh audience and some of the appetite? Did he pave the way for Alex Jones, or was Alex Jones already at it before Limbaugh became prominent?
Well, I don't know who started first. We could check that out at some point. But Alex Jones has been on for at least, I think, around 23, 24 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he started, I think he did his own thing. If anyone that Alex was copying or going after would probably have been William Cooper. William Cooper, who wrote the book A Pale Horse. I forget the name of the book, but A Pale Horse is in there. And he also was far right, warned about conspiracies within the government, that the government's be coming after the people, et cetera, et cetera. That was William Cooper. Now, he did not fare well because the government came after him and he passed away by government bullets in him many years ago. But so as he was waning out, Alex Jones was coming in.
Well, what do you think? Where do we go from here with conservative talk radio? Limbaugh, many say that he's one of a kind, can't be replaced. So, will conservative talk radio not be as prominent or as effective with his passing, or is somebody else going to step up, take his place, and it'll continue because of what he's established over the past decades?
Well, like they always say, when there's a void, it'll eventually get filled. So this would be a void for conservative talk radio, and I'm sure someone is going to try to fill that void. However, with the way things are now, with censorship and a banning of conservatives all over social media, I don't know how effective they're going to be.
Well, there seems to be some hope now that Parler has been reestablished and it has its own servers now, and also Gab and a few other alternate sites, Rumble and all that. So that would seem to provide some hope that we don't that none of us have to depend solely anymore on the usual social platforms. Do you see it that way?
Matt Drudge, a few years ago, called these social media platforms digital ghettos, as if it was a plan to have these free services, video service as YouTube, little chat thing as Twitter, etc. These free services were planned out to sort of hoard people into them and have the main talking being on Twitter, the main videos being on YouTube. Now, once they got everybody corralled into these digital ghettos, as Matt Drudge called them, then they turned up the heat. Then they started to get rid of all the things that they disagreed with, the wrong think, the conservatives. And now, yes, people have scrambled to try to put together a place for conservatives to go. But now there's so many. So the concentration of the amount of people that go to YouTube and watch YouTube videos, you don't have that now. Now you have a little bit over at BitChute, a little bit over at Minds, a little bit over at Rumble, a little bit over here, and it's just not the same. So the amount of viewers are not the same until somebody in that social media, the conservative or just simply the free speech media, starts to take the lead. If they can ever take the lead and shine through the rest of them, then maybe it might be effective again. But I don't see how that's going to happen, since if you start to raise your head too much, it's like whack-a-mole, and they slap you down. This is what happened with Parler. They not only did they pull the plug on Parler's web servers, I mean, what else are you going to do? They tell people, well, if you don't like it here on Twitter, go make your own. Well, they did, and then they pulled the plug on it. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a struggle all the way.
Yeah, well, it's again getting back to Limbaugh though. Uh, one of the reasons why he became such a huge success so quickly is that there was an audience waiting for that, primed for that, which had no outlet before he came along. And also the same thing worked with Fox News. You know, they became the network that was telling the other side of the story, not always accurately. They have their own axis to grind. However, you'd at least get some coverage on things in a different perspective that you wouldn't get on the lockstep presentations of the other networks. And, you know, case in point, the most egregious thing which points this out in the past year was how the mainstream media squelched, refused to carry, even mention, even question Biden about his son's laptop, Hunter Biden's laptop, which contained seemingly incriminating emails which linked both Hunter and the father, Joe Biden, with financial interests with businesses in Ukraine and in China. And even during the debate, after that story was broken solely by the New York Post and a few other networks before they canceled, a few other social platforms before they canceled it, they didn't even ask him about that during the debate, the mainstream media. So again, this was leading into, you know, a new type of atmosphere now, where you can't get real information. Or you can't even sift through some information, misinformation, half information. At least before, if you were discriminating enough, you could use the internet intelligently and write off some stuff, check out other stuff, cross-check, but increasingly you can't do that unless these other platforms now with alternate servers can start replacing or provide a vigorous alternative to the usual social media platforms.
Well, you said it. The people that desired that particular thing that Rush was offering, or many other, well, a few other people that are like Rush, people desired that, but it's not a desire for that particular brand of politics. What it is a desire for, in my opinion, is the truth. And I think as I aged and I realized that a lot of stuff that I believed was inaccurate and not the truth, and then I heard Alex Jones and others speaking and things and saying things that I wasn't aware of, I'd be like, to myself, I'd be saying, wow, you know, this sounds about right to me. This is making sense. This is the truth. And that's what I think the desire for people that's within people. They desire the truth. And what's going on with the mainstream media nowadays, and like you said, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I believe that the mainstream media has been infiltrated, taken over, and is now operating as solely a propaganda tool for the establishment, the elite, the powers that be. That's all that they're operating. They're pushing an agenda. Whatever agenda they say is being pushed by all of mainstream media, and they're trying to silence any opposition.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that it's going to work in terms of conditioning a new generation or the younger generation of accepting this misinformation, accepting one party line? Or do you think because of what Limbaugh and Alex Jones and others set off, that people are wising up, if you want to use that phrase, and they're not going to be as ready to accept the mainstream propaganda from the media? They're going to be skeptical? Or do you think the younger generation that's never known how it used to be before the censorship won't be able to distinguish that from what's going on now? Which direction do you think it'll go in?
I believe the bad direction. I believe, yes, the younger people will be influenced by the push of the propaganda. They are not going to be exposed to the conservative and the quote-unquote, I believe, truth that's out there. And Alex Jones is the perfect example of this. While Alex Jones was on YouTube, he was like number one. He had videos everywhere. the hit counts, the amount of views that he was getting was phenomenal, into billions, maybe even 100 billions. So he had that influence. Now, figure a younger person on YouTube back then, just scanning videos, watching cat videos or whatever they'd be watching. Every now and then, this Alex Jones video would come up, and maybe it would catch their eye. They'd click on it, they'd start watching it, and then they'd be exposed to that alternative viewpoints. Now, with the cancel culture, Alex Jones has been banned from so many platforms, I lost count. Same thing with many other conservatives, especially influential conservatives. Take a look. Donald Trump, banned from Twitter. Banned from Twitter. Our president of the United States, while he was still sitting president, banned from Twitter. So the only thing that's going to be left out there is what the elite establishment, quote unquote, New World Order wants people to see, wants people to believe. And the young people, unless they somehow fall down some weird crack and stumble into Alex Jones in the backwaters of the internet, they're not going to be exposed to this no more. So I believe this is a very dire situation, and I believe it's not good. We're heading down 1984 times 1,000.
Well, that doesn't sound very encouraging, very optimistic, considering what some people attribute the movement beginning with Rush Limbaugh and where it's ended up now. So we'll see where it goes, but it is indisputable that this is a level of censorship now with the media that we've really never seen before, at least not in my lifetime. And I've been in reporting and journalism for over 30 years, and as I've said a number of times, reporters and media outlets have always had their own opinions, their own slants, their own perspectives, but they used to at least make an effort to keep that in check when they did a straight report. They tried to be objective. They didn't let their own opinion show, but now it's just the opposite. You pick up the Washington Post and New York Times, many of the articles now, they read like editorials rather than objective, straightforward reporting where the facts are presented unembellished, and then the reader makes up his mind. Now, more and more of what they put out is editorial. It's really propaganda rather than straight news reporting. So we'll see where that ends up. But Rush Limbaugh passed away today, and he began a movement, and he leaves a lot behind. But considering the censorship and what's going on with the technology, we'll see where it all ends up. Rack Attack of Rack Attack Gamer, thanks very much for your thoughts tonight.
Thank you.